grade level is your child in?
Let's see, she's probably going to be responding here in the chat.
Oh, okay. I was just curious so I can.
He's in kindergarten. Iker's in kindergarten.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought I recognized the name. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. And this is great since you are our only parent so far. There'll be plenty of time if you have questions specific to your child that I'll be able to help with. And there's handouts also associated with that go into more depth as far as behaviors that kids might exhibit that could indicate there's anxiety, and then just some more detailed information than what I'm going over today. So if you're interested in that, if you've got an email address, we can go ahead and send those handouts to you, or I can send them home with Iker, whichever works better for you. But basically, and a lot of this information not only applies to kids, it applies to adults as well. So the first one I want to start with is just a brief overview. There's something called ACEs, ACES, and it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So just looking at the scope of what anxiety can do and how it can impact children and their learning, it's related to traumatic experiences that a child may have gone through. And as adults, we may have experienced these things as well. And there's some main topics under that category of ACEs, such as divorce, or if a child experienced a death in the family, if there's a family member who has a mental illness, if there's any alcoholism in the household or abuse, or drug use, things like that would cause anxiety for a child and an adult in the household. And even if there is it says 3% of children will have learning and or behavior problems if there's between 1 and 3 of those traumatic experiences, 21% of kids will have learning or behavior problems. And if they have if they've gone through 4 or more traumatic experiences as a child, and when we say as a child, I'm referring to specifically prior to the age of 18. 51% of those children can potentially have learning or behavior problems. So anxiety plays a very heavy part in the child's ability to learn and be as successful as they're able to be in school. And just in general, many kids have fears and worries and might feel sad at times. I know there's a lot of commercials on television about feeling sad. And sometimes when kids see those, they hear the word depressed and they're thinking maybe they're depressed, and it may not be the case. Every situation's different. But when the second paragraph, when it says when a child does not outgrow those fears that are typical in young children, and I'm going to go over those as well, or when those fears and worries are interfering with school, home, and play, or even friendships, the child might be struggling with an anxiety disorder. Some signs of anxiety. They're being very afraid when they're away from the parents, which these are the kids who don't want to come to school. They're absent frequently because they want to stay home, or they have extreme fear about different situations, which some of this can become such a hindrance to them that they're not able to function in a healthy way. And of course, those kids, it's always helpful if they're able to get some outside counseling. And very often I am sharing information with parents almost daily who are requesting some outside resources. Sometimes it's related to anxiety. Sometimes there's another situation going on. But we just want to make sure we're helping support the kids and their parents as much as we can. A child who is just afraid of being anywhere other than at home. And repeated episodes of these intense fears where it's like a panic attack. Their heart's racing, their breathing is very rapid. They just can't function in a healthy way because they're so overcome with that anxiety. And a lot of kids also who I talk with are worried about the future and things that are happening. And there's so much going on in the world now that's causing some stress and anxiety for adults as well. Some other signs and symptoms may show up in kids are anger. Anytime a child or an adult is angry, there's always another feeling underlying the anger every time. It's either they're sad about something, they're scared, they're nervous, they're frustrated, they're upset. but it comes out as anger because that's the easier emotion to say that we're having rather than I'm sad or I'm upset. So sometimes when kids are showing more anger or aggression, or the parents are saying they just aren't talking respectful to me at home, or they're not respectful to me at home, or they're not following directions. A lot of that, there's maybe some underlying anxiety going on that's causing them to behave that way. And especially for kids who want to do the right thing and they're acting like that toward their parent, that creates more anxiety for them because they know that they're not themselves and they feel badly about not being respectful to their parent or the other adult. And as far as getting in trouble at school, there are going to be some behaviors that they may exhibit that are the result of them being anxious. And a lot of times it's because, as kids, they don't have a lot of control of what goes on in their lives because they're the kid. And so sometimes even with a divorce, that's not their fault. They didn't cause that, and there's nothing that they can do to fix that. And that sense of they have no control over that creates a lot of anxiety for the child. They might want to, as I said, refusing to go to school. They'll complain about stomach aches or headaches a lot. Our school nurse is awesome at letting me know about kids who she's seeing frequently. We call those frequent flyers, who they're up in the clinic regularly because their stomach is hurting. Oftentimes that's an emotional issue and not a physical problem that's going on. But because we're not medical professionals, we don't ever assume. So we always let the parent know that, if they're saying they want to take the child to the doctor just to make sure everything is okay physically, obviously that's always a good idea. Fatigue. When someone's stressed out, that's exhausting. It's stressful on the body. So oftentimes a child who is tired and just can't stay awake in school. Sometimes it is because they're staying up late. They're on their video equipment or whatever it might be. But a child and an adult who's also very stressed out is also very tired because it is very, very hard on the body to continue to have that stress going on. And then just some examples of types of anxiety. And again, these will be in the handouts in more detail. The separation anxiety, we see that in elementary school a lot. And not just with kindergartens and starting school, but all grade levels. Sometimes they have something going on at home and they want to be at home to make sure that things are okay. So they don't want to leave the house. They don't want to come to school. And if there's ever an issue where there's something at school going on, we definitely want to be aware of that so that we can do whatever we need to help that child feel okay when they're at school. Let's see, again, frequent stomach aches or the panic that they might feel. Social anxiety. Some kids and adults have more difficulty than others knowing how to navigate social situations, and they don't feel comfortable approaching. It could be they're nervous to go up to other kids just to ask, can I play? And the grade levels that I have this year are K-3, and we do a lot of role playing. Specifically where there's kids who might be playing together and there's another person who wants to come up and ask, can I play? And then we talk about, even if you're not shy, how you feel nervous to go up and ask. And I'll ask the kids, why would somebody feel nervous to go up and ask, can I play? And the answer always is because they're afraid the other kids are going to say no. So then we talk about how we cannot control what other people choose to say or do. But what we can control is what we choose to say or do next. So if someone says, no, you can't play with us, and at our school, we like to think that kids are going to figure out a way to include others. But if someone happens to say no, then we talk about, okay, what can you do now? So different strategies, different ideas. You could ask someone else to play. But we do role playing to walk them through that so that if that were to be the case, they already know, yeah, they feel a little nervous, and that's okay. That's okay. But what can you do next if that person or people have chosen to say that, no, you're not able to play? And then sometimes kids, they just want to avoid the social situations completely because it just produces too much anxiety for them. Or if the child's having trouble sleeping or doesn't want to spend the night away from the house. Just several different, these are just examples of a few of types of social anxiety. Some other symptoms we might see, and again, this is children and adults, worrying about things before they happen. Sometimes we sometimes people, and myself included, we tend to overthink, but that's not productive. I mean, we're just thinking about the same thing over and over, worrying about it, and we're not doing anything to help ourselves to feel better. If we said something and we're like, oh, I should have said that a different way, it's over, it's done. We learn from it and we go on to the next thing. But if the child is constantly worrying about every little thing, that what if this happens, or what if that happens? Sometimes when I talk to kids who are going through something like that, I'll ask them, when do you remember this starting? And usually they can pinpoint, it started last year, or it's always been like this for me. I've always been nervous about things. And I always call the parent, because we want to, make sure that we're in communication with the parent as well, or the parent may have called me to ask me to talk with them. But one of the things I heard one time was when someone said, is it interfering with your daily life? And when you look at it from that perspective, is the child so anxious that it's interfering with their daily life? Meaning they don't ever seem like they're happy or excited. They don't seem to have a lot of friends because they're kind of afraid to talk to other people. They don't want to even come to school. They just want to stay home because they're just so anxious about what might happen. And it could have been that I remember one child sharing one time that she had gotten stuck in an elevator, and she was with her family, but that fear of, what if I'm ever stuck in an elevator by myself? So we talked about that. What if you are? What would you do? But then I also asked, is there ever a time you can think of that you would be by yourself on an elevator? Because your family or someone from your family would be with you. But just talking them through that to know, what would I do if that were to happen? Because we never know what, so it might have been some little thing that happened and it just stuck inside their head, and they have trouble moving on from it. And so it is causing a lot of anxiety for them. And again, I mentioned phobias earlier, where this kind of goes to the extreme with the anxiety that they're going through. Now, this speaking in front of adults or in front of a class, that's a very common fear. In fact, I read somewhere that people have more of a fear of speaking in front of people than of dying. So that's like the number one fear. Yeah. So that's we hear about that a lot, even with adults as well. Or if you're having a hard time making friends, not because they're not friendly, but just they don't know, okay, we said hi, what do we talk about now? So in the classes I'm in, we do role playing on, what do you talk about now? We've said hello, and we just stare at each other. What do you say now? Or that fear of, what if I say something that's not interesting? Or we don't know. We're all trying to navigate life, doing the best that we can. And with the selective mutism, there are occasions where we have had children who are selectively mute. They're not wanting to make eye contact or talk. And usually this is occurring before they're 10 years old. And sometimes some of that is anxiety. Sometimes some of it is they may just be the youngest child and everyone else just talks for them or gets what they want and they don't have a reason to speak. But all different types of situations. And again, every child's different. So many parenting books, but it's almost like what you really need is a book for each child, because what works with one child may not work with another one. Every child is different. And then just since we're all going through this together with the COVID and so many other things going on in the world now, there's so much more anxiety going on than there ever has been. But just, I remind the kids, we're all in this together. We're going to be okay. We just take one day at a time, and we're doing the very best that we can. And at our school, the teachers have morning meetings, and we're diligent about making sure that those occur every morning, so that the kids get that sense of connection in their room, and that this is their family away from their family at home, and that somebody's got their back. They have a friend. And, I've told kids that you don't have to have 500 friends. I wouldn't know what to do with 500 friends, but just as long, even if you just have one good friend, and if they're struggling with making that one good friend, and that if I'm made aware of that, I can help them talk through it with them about what they can do. But I also say to the other kids, when you go to recess, check around you. Do you see someone who's sitting by themselves? Do you see someone who's just walking the track by himself or herself? Maybe they are too nervous to come up. So what can you do? What can you do? So then we talk about how they could go up to that person and say, hey, do you want to hang out with us? Do you want to play with us? Just so that they're paying attention to what's going on around them and how can they best be a good friend to someone else who may be struggling with how to make a friend or worrying that they won't have a friend. And at the end of each of my lessons, I do 2 things every time. We have an activity we do where I call it, I have a poster that I bring with every lesson, and it says, you are amazing just the way you are. And at the end of every lesson, just as a reminder of that, which helps with their stress as well, and with their self-confidence, we do an activity where they hold up their arms and we'll say, I am strong. And then they put their hands on their heart and say, I'm kind. We put our hands on our hips and we say, I'm brave. And then I say, point to your brains and say, I'm smart. And then I tell them being smart is not just about grades. It's about making good choices and being kind to others and just doing your very best to be your best. And then we wave at everybody and say, I'm friendly. And then with the situation with the COVID, that we can't hug like we used to. So I just have them give themselves a big hug and just say, I am loved. And then a strategy that we're using for calming down when they're nervous or scared or even sad or upset or whatever it might be that's making it hard for them to sit still is, we call it starfish breathing. And it's the deep breathing technique, but they love it. I have a starfish that I bring in and I'll say, hold up your hand like your starfish. And we take our finger and go up their thumb and breathe in and down and breathe out. And we go up just like a roller coaster. And it's funny because sometimes it tickles, but that's okay. So we do our starfish breathing after every lesson, and it helps to calm them down as well, because we get so excited during our lessons so that they're ready for the teacher, to be able to pay attention when it's my turn to leave and it's her turn to go back to teaching their academics. But we're making sure, and in fact, my lessons this year are very focused on not only what I'm required to do by the county, but it's also social and emotional, and to remind them that we can't control what other people say or do. We can only control how we choose to react to it or respond to it. And something else I wanted to mention as well with the signs of anxiety in kids, oftentimes a child may also be defiant. And some of that, again, goes back to the fact that there's something happening in their life that they cannot control. And so by being defiant and refusing to do whatever the parent may be asking them to do, or even the teacher, that's their way of having some kind of control over the situation where they may be feeling hopeless or anxious. And sometimes with kids, anxiety can also appear to be attention deficit disorder, because kids who are anxious have a hard time sitting still and they have a hard time paying attention. And so that's why anytime a parent is concerned that it may be ADHD or ADD, as educational professionals, we do not diagnose because that's a medical issue if it's ADD. So they'll take the child to the doctor and the doctor can talk with the parent about that. And then there are checklists that they can have sent to school that the teacher can complete. And then that doctor takes those and determines whether it is true ADHD or if there's underlying anxiety going on presenting as an attention deficit disorder. And one of the handouts that let me just go on to this next. Okay, this slide right here is just giving some general examples of some ways to cope and calm down. And as well as what I was sharing with when we do the breathing activity with the kids. And then the last one, self-care. It's very important because if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to take care of others. So it's just like on the airplane when they have the adult puts the mask on first and then on the child. And it's the same with self-care. The hard part is finding the time for it. But these are just some examples of, just being sure to take care of yourself so that you have something left to be able to take care of your own children, or even at our school for the teachers to be able to take care of the students, because we're here for them and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help them be the best that they can be. One of the handouts that I have available that the teachers have found very helpful as well. It's 8 ways that a child anxiety shows up as something else. So it's, and it goes into detail on the handout, but things as anger, difficulty sleeping, defiance, lack of focus, avoidance, over planning, and chandeliering, which is basically when they're just kind of like, it's just like, they don't know what to, they're just so anxious, they can't even sit still, and they're just literally going, it's like that. And then negativity, because sometimes people who are very anxious can also be very negative. And it's not always because of anxiety. Some people, everybody's different, but sometimes that is a symptom of anxiety. So I always tell the teachers, and the teachers here are awesome about letting me know if they have a concern. And I tell parents as well, if there's ever any issue that you have a concern about, that you're just questioning or wondering, is this something I should be concerned about? I always encourage parents to call me so I can at least talk with them about what they're seeing at home, and then meet with their child to see what their child shares. And then I can call the parent back and say, okay, here's what's happening, and here's what we're going to, plan we have in place to try to help your child to be the best that he or she can be, even if they might still be feeling some anxiousness or having some other emotion going on that they're having trouble regulating. And then the other handouts, excuse me, go into what the information that I've typed up for this slide, just in a little bit more detail. And I've also included, because we have, I know this won't apply to kindergarten, but we have Georgia Milestones coming up. So I'm seeing more and more kids wanting to talk about test anxiety. So in third grade, because that's the highest grade level that I have this year, I am doing lessons in there on test anxiety and just some tips for test taking. And I know Ms. Sheffield and Ms. Dallas have another workshop coming up in April that will go into more detail about GMAS, and I can share this information there as well. But if you're interested in the handouts, I'm more than happy to either send them home with Iker, as I said, or I can you can email them to you, whichever you would prefer.
Also, I'm sorry, Ms. L, I just wanted to let you know we had some other parents joining us throughout the presentation, and so I've directly messaged you all and asked for your email addresses if you would respond, and if you'd like the handouts and a copy of some of the items in this presentation, I can get that to you via email.
Okay.
You can send that to them.
Okay, and I kept it short and sweet, but the handouts go into more detail. If you'd like those, I'm happy to send those to you. But did anybody have a question that they were wondering or wanting to ask, or because I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
And you could say them out loud, or you can, I'm monitoring the chat box. So if you're more comfortable typing in their families, feel free, and I will read them out.
Okay. And I'm going to share my phone number just in case, because sometimes parents may want to ask something, but not in a group setting. So my direct office line in this, I'm the only one who uses this phone. So any message that's left is completely confidential. But my office phone is 678-245-3134. Now this year I'm working with kindergarten through third grade, but our other counselor is only here part-time, and she works with fourth and fifth. So after she leaves, I'm also available for fourth and fifth grade. And I do work with some of those students because we don't want anyone to not have a counselor here full time. So even if your child is not in K-3, you feel free to call me anyway, because I'm more than happy to help you if needed. But it's 678-245-3134. Were there any questions in the chat box, Ms. Dallas, or we're good?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
I did put your phone number in the chat box.
Okay, perfect.
Have record of that as well.
Okay. And then I'll you can let me know if I need to send handouts, or if you've got those as well. Right?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Francis. I do see your message there. So I will make sure to get those handouts to you.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, if there aren't, are we good with the chat then? I don't want to stop if there's anything
There
else.
are no questions as of right
Okay.
now. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you to I can't see who all was on with us, but thank you to whomever joined us. We appreciate it. I love doing presentations for parents. You guys are awesome. We appreciate all your support and helping us support your child while they're here in the building with us during the day. So thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Sheffield and Ms. Dallas as well.
Yes, no problem. Miss Ann, would you stay on so we can go ahead and discuss your question? All right. Thank you, Ms. Mary. And I've jotted that down. So we'll make sure that you get those handouts as well. And then Miss Ann, I can send you the handouts in the child's book bag, or I can email them to you. Which one do you prefer? Email. All right, and I have your email as well. So we should be all set. Thank you guys again. If you have no questions, that is all for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss-
Have an
Miss
awesome
Emma.
day.